Hey guys, okay. So tried doing this before, a little bit distracting. So I'm going to try doing this now. And this is another kind of rambling video, but I promise there is a point. And it's not me trying to hold in a burp. That's not the point. So the point of these videos is to help you guys develop psychically and mediumistically, or whatever way the extra sensitive individual wants to develop. The first thing, though, that I want to focus on is, for instance, when we're developing psychically, and we're focusing on, or mediumistically, but we're focusing on the principles of developing, like clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairagustance, which is, I think that one is clear smelling. When you're focusing on these types of abilities, the way that we increase these kinds of abilities is by focusing on the senses that increase those abilities. So for instance, if I want to be able to hear a spirit talk, then when I'm out in nature or when I'm doing anything, I'm intently listening. That's going to increase your ability to hear whatever you're increasing physically. Like if you're trying to hear more sounds in the environment, or you're trying to do that, it's going to increase that psychic ability as well. And this also goes for clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. And that's something that took me a little while to learn, that if we focus on these abilities and we focus on improving them, that it works for the psychic abilities too. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, for instance, let's talk about clairvoyance for a second. I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. So with clairvoyance, if you see an image, right, like you see a flash of an image or you see a flash of a video in your mind, it's kind of like these images or these videos or these slideshows, however you perceive it, you start to see something in your mind's eye. And at first, these images don't make a lot of sense, but we can ask our guides, and we can ask our higher selves, whatever you want to call it, and we can actually get insight on these. So let's say I close my eyes, or you can do it with your eyes open, but let's start out. Let's close our eyes. And as you're closing your eyes, you're like, okay, I see a flower. And so then you're like, okay, a flower. All right, and then you go to give the person the message, okay, well, I'm seeing a flower. So you can do that, you can try that. But if you actually want to get information, the way you go about it is like this. You're like, okay, I see a flower. Well, what color is the flower? What kind of flower does it look like? Does it have a lot of petals? Does it have a few petals? Is the flower wilting? Is it alive? Is the flower out of season, out of bloom? Does the flower look well cared for? There's a lot of things in the color of the flower and things like that. So by focusing on just, I see a flower, that's very vague. What we want to do is we want to take the little details of these images and we want to blow them up, and then we want to look at it in a bigger way. So I want you to imagine taking a picture on your smartphone, and I want you to imagine you're zooming in and you're looking at the image in its entirety. And with psychic ability, that's what we want to do. Whatever we focus on, we're going to start getting answers, okay? Wherever we focus, the energy flows, and we can start getting things. And from that, you can actually start a conversation with someone. You can see a flower. That flower seems fine, but then the more we look at it, we see maybe it's wilting a little bit, maybe it hasn't been properly cared for, and the flower could be something that defines someone's marriage. The flower could be something that defines someone's relationship with self, or it could be something with a child, or it could actually be maybe a failing flower business. It just really depends. Some people see things that don't seem related, and then they are. So like I said, some people, their psychic, I guess you would call it a psychic lexicon or a psychic dictionary, right? Their psychic dictionary says, okay, flower to me means business. Another psychic would be like, okay, flowers to me mean love. Another person would be like, flowers to me mean, relationships with family, or it means this or it means that. And it could even be maybe a flower symbolizes a a loved one who has passed on. But it depends, because each person picks up the images differently. So, for instance, if I told you a flower means something to me, that's my version of it. That might not be yours. You might very well have the same version of it, but we don't know. That's why practice is important in learning these things. Sometimes the oddest things turn out to be right, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. So, I'm trying to think of an example here. For instance, I had something with, and I think I was reading a story where another medium had this too, if I'm not wrong. I was reading a book, or I was reading something. But frogs sometimes play a role in my psychic impressions, or my mediumistic impressions. And one time I just kept seeing frogs, and I was like, okay, and I couldn't make it go any further. I couldn't think, okay, what do frogs mean? I couldn't make that go any further, so eventually I just said, okay, did your loved one have an affinity for frogs? Did they do anything with that? And it turned out that they collected frog memorabilia, like anything frog related. They just liked the color green, they liked the way frogs were, and just these kind of cutesy frog things, and they were really big into that. And so, depending on the context, that can actually be really useful. To you, it may not seem, I guess the word would be, it may not seem very valuable or relevant, but to the person, it could mean the world. And that's why it's important to not be worried about hearing no. Like, yeah, we're putting ourselves out there and we're trying stuff out, but being worried of hearing no, it just makes it so that the flow of the reading gets backed up and it gets clogged, and it makes it harder for us to go forward. It's okay if that's happened, you know, like I've always said, we need to practice gentleness, right? But that's something that we can work on, is letting ourselves just speak. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. But we need to not put as much emphasis on being right or wrong. We need to put more emphasis on just letting the message come through, because when we worry about being right or wrong, it's more about our egos getting in the way. And it's easier said than done, but we're there to spread a message. We're not necessarily there to be right or wrong. We're there to just give a message. Evidence is great. All of that is really good. But honestly, we're there to just give a message. And so we need to get the ego out of that. Again, easier said than done, but it can be done. And that's the other thing, when you're working with that flow state, as soon as we start thinking, that's when things start becoming a lot more difficult. Because, for instance, I see a flower, right? We'll go back to the flower. I see a flower, and then I'm thinking, okay, flower, what's related to, like I'm really thinking about it, and I go out of being in the flow state to starting to think of, okay, flower, what does flower mean? Like I'm starting to get off track because I'm using my mind actively and I'm thinking about it, and that makes it more difficult to connect and stay in the flow. So I want you to view the flow as a state like dancing, or as a state like playing a sport, or doing something where we're not thinking. That's the flow state that I'm talking about. Or if you're doing art, sometimes you're doing the art, other times it feels like the art is doing you, for lack of a better word. Sometimes if you do writing, if you do something, you'll be writing something and it feels like something else takes over. It feels like there's another force that takes over, and it feels effortless. It feels like you're able to get ideas out, or you're able to draw, or you're able to write effortlessly, or sing, or whatever it happens to be. And that's the one thing that I want you guys to know going into this, is that it takes effort. And this is going to sound really weird. It takes effort to master the flow, but the only reason it takes effort is because we've been told so many times that we have to work really hard at the things we love in order to be good at them, when really all we have to do is focus and allow ourselves to breathe. The only thing we have to do with this is just allow ourselves to let go. And that can be a difficult thing, because we've been instructed to hold on for so long. Allowing ourselves to let go is a talent in itself. And so everyone has that gift, but it's just like reaching in, allowing yourself to be relaxed, allowing yourself this new form of expression, and that's huge for developing as a medium or a psychic or an energy healer or anything, because especially for healers too, if you're focused on the end result, you're not in the process of being in the moment with that energy, being in the moment with that presence, that person. So you need to focus on, especially if you're a healer, you need to focus on, I'm going to heal this person. You want to focus more on, I'm going to be a conduit and I'm going to allow energy to flow. Don't focus on necessarily helping the person. Do that, absolutely do that, but focus more on the fact that you're there to experience this energy, and the energy wants to experience you, and you're a conduit for that energy. If the person's really ready to receive it, they will receive it. If not, they won't, but it's not your fault. You're a conduit, and things happen the way they're supposed to. We can't force things to happen, but we can be a conduit and we can allow things to happen through us. So don't be hard on yourself if you didn't help that person with something. Instead, focus on allowing yourself to be more in the present moment. Don't give up that present moment is basically what I'm trying to say. We're focusing on healing, we're focusing on helping, and the ego likes to sneak in there. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is be a conduit, be aware of the energy. And in all of these endeavors, self-expression is such an important thing, because this is where we find our soul's handwriting, so to speak. This is where we can really examine how our soul operates, how we operate with it, how we can take these abilities to that next level. And you're not going to be like anyone else. You're going to have your own way of doing things. You might have ways that are similar to someone else, but you'll have things that work better. There was one psychic who, I think it was asparagus? It was something, but she would stare at something, get into a trance from it, and it was a vegetable of some kind, and then she would be able to give, accurate predictions on things and give people, I think she was either giving people readings or she was reading future events, I'm not sure, but that's seership, and that's another thing. But you can use anything to get into that trance state. You can use anything to do any of this. It's just what you feel comfortable using. And like I said too, that we don't allow ourselves to stop growing is another huge one. I'm just going to move this down a little bit. There we go. We allow ourselves to keep learning every day. So we kind of just don't let ourselves fall into a sort of, I guess, like a catatonic state. We want to be learning. We want to be appreciating new facets of life. We want to have that be kind of our go-to. And as a medium, or as anyone who is someone who's learning a lot, you're always going to kind of be on the edge of being uncomfortable. And that's good, because when we're on the edge of being uncomfortable, it means that we're close to discovering new things. You don't discover new things by staying where you are. If we were comfortable all the time, we wouldn't grow. There'd be no reason to grow. It's because that we're uncomfortable that we can learn new things, that we can grow, and we can understand ourselves better. So that's actually a good thing if we're uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, but eventually you'll learn to like it. You'll learn to get used to that feeling of just allowing yourself to be. Let's see. And I feel like that's kind of going to be the end of this video for this one. But you guys, let me know if you liked this video, and please thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And share the video if you feel like it's worth sharing. I just want to get this message out there, and eventually I'm going to be establishing a place where all of this information and much, much more can be found in one place, and I'm going to try and make that free for everyone so that we can just learn and we can go from there. The best thing that we can do now, though, is allow ourselves to focus on that feeling of love, and allow ourselves to focus on the feeling of the present moment. From the present moment, all things are possible. As soon as we start focusing into that present moment, a lot of things become a lot easier. And that goes with psychic ability too. To master the flow state is to learn the let go state. Okay, so when we let go, we flow. And that's something that we'll be learning At least I will for a while. But that's something that just, it needs to be taught. It needs to be learned, because so much greatness is in that flow state, and we can harness that. So with that being said, you guys, I hope you enjoy the video, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.